Welcome to the Predictive Playbook. I'm your host, John Ryan, here for our second show of the day. And I'm very happy and pleased with the first-time guest here on the Predictive Playbook, Steve Merrill of WagerTalk.com, who has had the most outstanding college basketball season you could ever imagine over at WagerTalk. And his record now stands at 57-28 against the spread, a 105.4% ROI. That's almost like a couple of days of GameStop for goodness sake. So, Steve, welcome to the show. And how's your week going?
Yeah, it's going well. You know, we started hot, obviously. To get to a record like that, you've had some, monster runs at some point, and we were fortunate enough to have that right out of the gate. I think like a 17-4 start, John. But the good news and the more important news, in my opinion, is, we haven't cooled off. After that 17-4 start, we've gone like 30 and 20 something. So, I mean, it's still over 60% for the last couple months. And as you said, the most important number for me and my long-term clients is that return on investment. And I know with your financial background, John, that's what you look at as well. And people might not understand ROI. It's return on investment. And 105% ROI means you have doubled your bankroll in 3 months with college basketball, which is incredible. And it's the best is yet to come. March Madness is here as we speak. And this is the best time of the year, in my opinion, to be a fan of college hoops and also to be betting college hoops as well.
I have to say, Steve, I remember on the Wager Talk NBA show, you said you had to be a financial guy to quote the slogan, catch a falling knife.
Right.
So I was pleased to hear that. And now every time I do say that, I have a sense of honor with it, too. It's nice.
Yeah, I definitely stole that from the financial world. And I've got to come up with something for like a team like the Utah Jazz, though. It's the opposite of trying to guess when they stop covering. And I've tried to come up with an analogy for that one, but it would be a toss knife, I guess. But yeah, that's the falling knife, as you know, John, from the financial world, is when, people are like, oh, this stock is down 80%, let's buy it. Well, if it goes down, 50% more, it's down 90%. So it's like, that's what people don't realize, is that drop from 80% to 90% is a 50% loss if you get in at the wrong time still. So you never want to try to catch that ice-cold stock that's going to zero, and you don't want to try to be betting on these really bad teams until we see them turn things around. And, you're a Big Ten guy. Michigan State's a good example of that, I think. They were just
I think excellent example
for the first couple of months, but they're starting to peak now under Izzo at the right time. We all knew they were going to peak at some point. But if you tried to guess in December or January if that turn was coming, you just kept losing money in the short term.
That's true. I remember with the Sacramento Kings that I had made an adjustment to that slogan saying that the knife has fallen so far that it's bouncing off the floor.
Right.
So then it was a little bit safer to try to grab it. But, I like your analogy with Michigan, especially coming off. I was on Michigan yesterday. My record pales in comparison to yours, but 60% over 100 plays. I'm pleased with that, but the weekend was not good. I also had Florida State. Some days you're the dog and some days you're the fire hydrant, and I spent the weekend on the wrong end of that one. But with the tournaments coming up, let's take a look at the lines here. I'm going to share a screen with us here. Now, these are the games for tonight. Here's the team futures. So then we're going to go to conference winners. So if you don't mind, let's start with the Big Ten. Because my thinking, Steve, is that there's Gonzaga in the NCAA tournament, and then there's the Big Ten. And I really think if I could get one of these books to make me a line where you pick Gonzaga or the Big Ten field, I would take the Big Ten field. I just feel confident that and it's not my love affair with the Big Ten. I just think there's so many outstanding teams that in a one-game situation against Gonzaga, should that be the final, I think the edge would go to them.
Yeah,
Who do you think is a good sleeper for the Big Ten tournament?
Well, the Big Ten tournament's a different beast, obviously, because one thing that concerns me about the Big Ten is that they are incredibly deep and talented this year, but they've also been beating each other up for the past 3+ months, where a team like Gonzaga, you don't want to say they've been going through the motions, but they really have since they've gotten into conference play. If anything, Gonzaga did play, by the way, some good non-conference games. They played Kansas, Virginia, Iowa, a Big Ten school, and they beat them all pretty handedly to start the season. They played Auburn as well early on. I just kind of wish those games were coming now, when those teams are playing maybe a little bit better, had more experience. And you just wonder if this weak conference schedule for Gonzaga is going to eventually hurt them come crunch time in these tournament games. Whereas, as you said, the Big Ten is battle tested, yet you wonder how much fatigue they're going to have. So I almost, to be honest, John, I'll be looking for one of those top 10 teams, like, whether it's Iowa, Illinois, Michigan, Ohio State, whoever gets bumped earliest this coming week in the Big Ten tournament, they actually might be the best play on in the NCAA tournament. Why
that's an excellent point. Yep.
3 games, and we see that all the time. A team gets bumped on Friday or Saturday, and they're fresher than that team that goes all the way through Sunday and wins the whole thing. And it doesn't really matter. It's going to bump them maybe 1 seed spot. Michigan, I think, is a 1 no matter what. Illinois has played their way into the 1 as of this weekend. Maybe they have to go far now to hold it. I think Ohio State's probably played themselves out of the 1. They probably have very little to play for at this point in the Big Ten tournament, to be honest. So, yeah, the conference tournaments are tricky in that regard. But I agree with you. The Big Ten looks loaded. I'm a believer in Gonzaga. Offensively, they're incredible, as efficient as I've seen in recent history. But that conference weakness and the defensive, and also let's keep in mind they play extremely fast. I'm not a fan of that come tournament time. I like these slow half-court teams, these half-court defensive teams. And that's another reason I think the Big Ten is going to be dangerous. You look at a team like Michigan and Illinois. There's only 3 teams, by the way, in the efficiency rankings right now that are top 10, both offense and defense. Gonzaga actually 4. Gonzaga's 10th defensively, so they barely made it. But there's 3 that are more balanced, and that's Michigan and Illinois, and also Houston, who also has that weaker conference. We haven't really talked much about them this year. But Houston, by the way, plays half-court, slow-down, good defensive basketball. That might be the one that messes up that whole bet there if you're taking Gonzaga Big Ten versus the field. But then again, a very non-conference, weak conference schedule. We'll see how that attacks the Cougars come March Madness.
Yeah, one that a friend of ours that you know quite well, Kyle Hunter, brought this to my attention. Loyola Chicago. He got it at 50-1 and actually motivated me to do the same thing. They're now at 45-1. And granted, that's a long shot. But I think if there was going to be a big-time Cinderella, they seem to have the pieces. They may not have the absolute depth that some of the other teams that you just mentioned have, but if you're looking for, I guess what I would say is a good bet, that this one might not win, but if you continue to do the research and you make these bets that have a lot of value, it's going to pay off over time. And I do think Loyola Chicago is one of those. But to think with any degree of probability that they could win the NCAA tournament with some degree of certainty, I think is kind of like fool's gold. But you just don't know in this tournament. That's what makes it so great.
Yeah, a couple of things. First of all, whenever you're getting 40 or 50-1, you always have some hedge opportunities come Final Four. They don't even have to win the thing at that point. And I'm not big on hedging in general because normally you're hedging away an edge, and you and I take long-term investment perspectives. So if we're getting them at 40-1 come tournament, if they make the Final Four, then they're 10-1. So you're hedging away an edge. But with a big-time lottery ticket payoff like that, it's almost like a long future option or something in the financial markets. I think you should at least take your initial investment back, if not a little, then some. And also for emotional reasons, as handicappers, we need to be solid emotionally every day. And it does feel better to lock up a profit at times. But Loyola Chicago is an interesting team because when we had that tournament a couple years ago, I actually was doing a March Madness preview show the week before, and they wanted me to give out a Final Four sleeper, and I picked Loyola. Didn't necessarily think they're going to make it there, but they were my sleeper, and that's the year they made it. They're not a secret anymore, but I still like them a lot this year. We talked about good half-court, slow-down defensive teams. They're the epitome of that. In fact, they play at one of the slowest tempos in the nation, half-court, slow-down style. And if you look at the adjusted efficiency rankings, and this takes into account that they played a weaker schedule, they're still the number 1 ranked defense in the entire nation out of 350-some teams. So best defense in the country, slow-down half-court style. And then on top of that, they do have some experience from making the Final Four recently. So I like that futures play, and even at 40, 50-1, I think there's still value there.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Let's see, in the there's also on DraftKings, and I just discovered this today, individual teams to either make the tournament or not. And I said to make Final Four, we don't want that. We want, here we go. That's the seeding. Sorry for the delay here, but we'll find it. I probably have to scroll down a little bit.
Yeah, we're looking at Duke 8-1 to make the tournament right now at DraftKings, which is just amazing.
Yeah, and you read my thought process here, because if we look at let's go back to the ACC tournament, because I was thinking that after that display they put on against North Carolina, they would have to win the ACC to get in. But when you're looking at the tournament, and I'll get back to that one here. Go down to ACC. We see that Duke is plus 5,000 to win the ACC. But as you said, they're plus 800 to get into the tournament. So that's a big gap, I think, in my opinion. And with Duke being plus 5,000, does that mean they have to win the first two, obviously, Boston College and Louisville? And then do they or do they not have to beat Florida State? I thought for sure they'd have to get to the final.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I think the one thing that you could say about Duke is they probably have a teeny bit of an edge over other schools. You would think if it's on the line, if it's borderline, you have to figure they get a little bit of a bump. First of all, being a big name school, I mean, it's good for college basketball to have them in the tournament. And I don't necessarily have a problem with a team like Kentucky or Duke or Kansas getting that bump, because I mean they've played so well over the years, they kind of deserve it. So I guess if there's any other team we were talking about, I would say they have to win the conference tournament to get in. The fact that it is Duke and Krzyzewski, maybe they could get in, but they're going to have to play Florida State probably in the finals, and that's the team they're going to have to beat, I think, to have a quality win, or Virginia, a school like that. Hard for me to see them not getting in otherwise, but you never know. It is Duke, and it would not shock me if they snuck in somehow.
Yeah, I think, clearly they have to win the first two, which I think is Boston College, and then I guess it would be Louisville. But then it seems like if they win that third one, whoever it's against, which would be the semifinal, and get into the final, then I think that actually would get them in. But the market is telling you plus 5,000 on Duke there. Market's not saying much confidence for the team right now, and maybe that's some value. They're just so beat up now.
Yeah, I mean, figure 1 out of 50 times they would find a way to win. What is it, 4 straight, I guess? But
yep,
it is interesting. And by the way, that is a two-way market on making it and not making. A lot of times you say it's 8-1 on the yes. Well, they're not letting you take the no, but they are. It's 1 to 10. So the market is saying the true odds of Duke making the tournament is 9-1, 10% basically. So those are fairly true odds that you're getting there at 8-1. It's 1 to 10 the other way. So yeah, I mean the odds are definitely saying they do not have to win the ACC tournament. I think you're right. They probably get a third win in the tournament against a quality top 2 or 3 team in that conference.
Yep.
That's probably the thinking, is that maybe at that point it's kind of 50-50 then.
Yeah, I wish I could find this link I apologize for the individual teams, because the market was very, very wide for Stanford. It was plus 700, minus 1,400.
Yep.
But to make it. But then you looked at Xavier, and Xavier was like a game line. It was like minus 118, and plus.
Yeah, it's pick them. You look at a team like Michigan State too. We'll get back to. They're minus 1,000. They're 1 to 10 to make it, 8-1 not to. So it's the exact opposite odds of Duke for Michigan State to make the tournament. But yeah, obviously,
great point.
Those bigger, spreads. And by the way, another ACC team, the biggest spread on there, they've got about 7 teams listed. Is Georgia Tech is 1 to 12 to make it on the yes, almost 7-1 on the no. So Georgia Tech's looking in pretty good shape compared to Duke.
Yeah, I wish I could find that page, but I'm drawing a blank here. I guess let's transition over to some games that you wanted to talk about. And since this is the first time on the show, I kind of like having it be all about you and your picks. And future shows, I know you and I can debate till the cows come home, and you're a very, very, very good debater because you back everything up with facts and not opinions. So I look forward to that too. But what game did you want to look at that is on the board tonight?
There's a few conference title games, some semifinal games. It's not a real loaded card. I've got one best bet at wagertalk.com, which goes later tonight. But there's a game also I just posted up there as a free play. The other game I was looking at this evening, which I do like. It's a good one to talk about here on the show. It goes at 7 Eastern on ESPN, a national TV game tonight. The Southern Conference, Mercer and Greensboro. We don't talk a lot about this conference. I'll be honest, I don't use this conference often. I usually kind of tier towards the big Power 5 schools. But this is an interesting setup because Mercer's now playing their 4th game in 4 nights without rest. Greensboro is playing their 3rd in 3 nights, but they're the better team. They beat Mercer both times in the regular season. And what's interesting about those games, John, is that Mercer shot better from 3-point range percentage-wise in both games and still lost straight up. You know, 3-point shooting is kind of the modern-day equivalent of like turnover margin in the NFL. Often it's random. It fluctuates a lot game to game. It can often produce misleading scores. But when you see a team have the edge from 3-point arc and lose both games, they're obviously not the better team. And Greensboro has to win this game to get in. It's a Southern Conference. They're not getting in that large. And another thing is they didn't play well against the Citadel on Saturday. Kind of started slow, won that game. Started slow again yesterday in the semis. A 4-point favorite. They're only up by 1 against East Tennessee. Ended up winning by 12. I think that's the buy sign, actually. I like the fact that their best half so far came in the second half last night, and now playing a team playing their 4th game in 4 nights. So I like UNC Greensboro. It opened 3.5, 4. The sharp money hit it up to 5. Still 5s out there as we do this, but I have seen some 5.5 start to pop. So Greensboro -5 looks like a sharp side tonight at 7 Eastern, and that is on ESPN National TV.
Yeah, I like to break down a lot, Steve. UNC Greensboro, for what it's worth, is defensively a lot better than Mercer based on some of the stuff I'm looking at. I look at assist-to-turnover ratios a lot, both offensive and defensive, for a starting point. And UNC Greensboro ranks 27th nationally with a .77 opponent assist-to-turnover ratio. And for those that don't know what that means that the defense is generating far more turnovers than allowing assists. So for every .77 assists, the defense is generating a turnover. And whenever it's below 1, and increasingly lower than 1, that becomes better and better and better defensively. And offensively, they are 98th nationally, 1.119. That means they're generating more assists than turnovers. And Mercer's defense is, I like the word horrid. They're 200th with a 1.017 opponent assist-to-turnover ratio. So I think both ends of the court favor UNC Greensboro, and then add in that Mercer's playing 4 games in 4 nights. That's brutal. That's tough to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of adages, too, in sports. Sometimes they're true, sometimes they're not, but you always hear defense wins championships. That's not always true. You need offense, especially in the modern era. But I agree, that's another point I liked about this game, John. We are getting not only the better team, but we're getting the better defensive team with Greensboro. And I think that's important in a championship game, especially when both teams are fatigued. And the other adage, too, that I like to buck is that it's hard, and you know this from your research, that it's hard to beat a team 3 times in the same season. More times than not, the team that won the first 2 wins the 3rd game because they're the better team. Now covering the point spread is a different story, but
right.
More times than not, they win all 3. So I actually like Greensboro better because they beat them the first 2 times. They are the better team, and laying 5 points is a very moderate price range. It's not like we're having to win by 20 or something. So yeah, defense wins championships, and it's hard to beat a team 3 times is actually not true, and I think those apply tonight as well.
I agree. I know you wanted to look at the BYU Pepperdine game. And that's actually a game I have a free pick on over at sportsmemo.com myself. And in this case, I'll go first. And if you disagree, it's perfectly all right. But I'm on Pepperdine. And Pepperdine, split the games earlier this season with BYU. They won and covered as a 6.5 point home dog. They they actually pushed on the road, losing by 11 back in January. So, I think there's a couple of things that stick out with head coach Romar. He's really a good 20-7-1 push against the spread on away and neutral court settings facing a conference foe, and plus he's 11-2 against the spread in the road, following back-to-back games, making 78% or more free throw attempts since he's been the coach of the Wave. And I think when you get into the tournament, Steve, free throw percentage becomes increasingly more important, especially down the stretch in a tight game. How many times have we seen a 12 seed upend a 5 seed in the tournament, and it comes down to a free throw shooting contest with all the pressure in the world on the 5 seed, and we know what happens. So I think Pepperdine can stay within this number, and I admit that it's a bit of a reach with BYU, and BYU probably has an axe to grind with Gonzaga possibly on deck, and they will be on deck for the championship. But I think Pepperdine keeps it close.
Yeah, the free throw line, free throw percentage is definitely an interesting stat. I saw years ago. I haven't checked it recently, but I know years ago that was an angle that actually worked very well in the NCAA tournament when you could get some of the top free throw shooting teams. And the one thing though, when you're an 8 to 9 point dog like Pepperdine, it might not matter as much because they're going to be the team fouling late if they're behind. But you definitely like those. I like teams like Pepperdine to extend the lead when they're maybe like a 5 to 7 point favor. That we say there's no key numbers in basketball. There's some argument that 7's the one kind of key number because that's the start-stop point when teams do and don't foul anymore. So a team like Pepperdine that shoots extremely well from the line can be interesting there. And I know we only have a couple minutes left, so I'll throw it over to that other game real quick. The St. Mary's Gonzaga game beforehand is interesting because Gonzaga obviously should win this game as an 18-point favorite. But what's interesting about St. Mary's is they play one of the slowest half-court styles, one of the best defenses in the country. One of the few losses I've had this year, as you've mentioned, I've had a great college season, 57 to 28, but I did have Virginia earlier this year against Gonzaga back in December, and I remember watching that game because Virginia had like 5 turnovers on their first 6 possessions. It was one of the worst starts of the season. Got behind by double digits. They played slow half court. They just couldn't catch up. So you're concerned with a team like St. Mary's tonight is that it's like an option football team. Once they're down 2 touchdowns, they can't just keep running the ball. They got to start doing something they're not good at. So I found it interesting. The full game line is 18. The first half line is actually 10.5. So if you're going to look at St. Mary's tonight, I think the first half play makes more sense. As you're getting plus 10.5, they can maybe keep it close for a half. Once they get behind like they will, all bets are off with a team that can't run and play catch up. So if you're looking at that game tonight, I think St. Mary's plus 10.5 first half versus 18 for the game makes a lot of sense due to how that game will probably play out.
Yeah, I think if I'm right, Steve, you can correct me if I'm not. I think in an earlier meeting with Gonzaga, they actually were leading at the half and then just got throttled.
Yeah, their home game they actually kept close, and the road game they were down by like 20 at the half and got blown out, or double digits at the half at Gonzaga. So that's a perfect example, And there again, if you lose the 10.5 tonight, you're not going to win the plus 18. So it's like I think that's the least likely outcome is that they cover the second half and not the first. So if you are going to play St. Mary's, the first half makes sense. In-game betting also might make sense there. If Gonzaga starts pulling away. The only concern, though, like you said, is they do have a game on deck most likely against BYU or Pepperdine tomorrow. So there again, it's a tough to back Gonzaga, but they could sit guys and still maybe be the better team. But yeah, you're right. They played twice this year, and St. Mary's kept it close at home, and more importantly, it was close in the first half. The game at Gonzaga, in which they lost, I believe, by 22, they were down by double digits at halftime, and it was already out of reach.
Yeah, this is a contrasting style of pace, as you mentioned. I'm looking at Haslam metrics, which I use from time to time. I think it's a very impressive database that Eric has over there and very useful. But anyway, Gonzaga ranks 4th in pace of play, 75.46 possessions, and contrast St. Mary's, 347th out of, I believe it's 357 Division I programs at 65. So you very rarely ever see pace of play differing by 10. And in this game you do. So if St. Mary's wants to keep it close and have a chance at an unbelievable upset, they're going to have to control the pace for every single minute.
Exactly.
And that's a lot to ask.
Yeah, once again, if you like them at plus 18, why not play the plus 10.5? Because I don't see a scenario where they are down by more than 11 at the half and they're able to come back and cover the 18 at that point. So yeah, first half, earlier in the game. And obviously, too, when you have the better team, more minutes means they pull away. So whenever you're taking an inferior underdog, you want as short of a clock as possible. And St. Mary's is capable of slowing things down, at least in the short-term first half, maybe. Yeah,
I agree with that. That's good. Well, Steve, I know you have to get running here, but I can't thank you enough for being on the show. And everybody, listen to me. Go over to Wager Talk and sign up for whatever subscription he has. I could sit here and say, sign up for me. But this guy I've known since 1997. We broke into the industry together. And, you're not making a mistake by going over to Wager Talk and getting his package. 68% for the season against the spread. I don't know anybody on the planet that's been better. So I highly recommend them, and if that's, I guess that'll be it for the show. So for the Predictive Playbook, I'm John Ryan, and may all the wins be yours.